It wasn't until the Brandenburg tornado hit that I think we all realized, hey, we are in for some trouble here.
The building we were in was destroyed and everything around us here was destroyed.
It always happened someplace else, and tonight it happened in Louisville.
Everything was spinning. You could hear everything in the house ripping and tearing and being pulverized.
That is a tornado.
We don't hardly go anywhere that April 3rd isn't a vivid memory.
50 years ago today, right about this time, a large tornado swept right through the heart of Metro Louisville, devastating neighbors like right here in Crescent Hill. The EF4 tornado would change hundreds of thousands of lives. Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Doug Proffitt.
And I'm Ben Pine. That tornado was part of the April 3rd, 1974 Super Outbreak that impacted 13 different states, the second largest tornado outbreak in U.S. history.
From the roof of our building downtown, a WHAS TV camera captured the large tornado as it moved first across the fairgrounds. From there, it tore through Audubon Park, across Eastern Parkway and Bardstown Road, and then left a path of destruction through Cherokee and Seneca Parks.
That's when the tornado hit here in Crescent Hill, damaging homes and the water company and impacting the city's water supply.
And then one of the worst hit neighborhoods in our area was Northfield. At the time, a brand new neighborhood off Brownsboro Road, but those brand new homes were wiped out in a matter of seconds.
I just drove up about 15-20 minutes ago.
And where's your house?
Right there. Right there. It was right there.
Meteorologist Colleen Peterson spoke with one survivor from nearby Indian Hills about how she and her family survived.
When you first saw this damage, were you thinking, I'm so lucky to be alive that I survived?
Absolutely. And that's all you think about is we made it.
This is Wadia Newman, a survivor, 50 years later. She was just 14 years old on April 3rd, 1974.
It was a sunny day. I remember it being very windy. I was playing my piano at the time, and I didn't want to be interrupted.
When did you know that it was heading your house, and
well,
when did it realize?
My mother got more frantic, and she said, get in the basement. So I went upstairs, and my blinds were closed, and I lifted the blinds up and came face to face with a tornado. I looked up at the sky right above our house, and the clouds were spiraling into the tornado. And at that point, I said, that's going to be a direct hit.
Wadia grabbed her sister Peggy and ran down the stairs into the basement.
Then there was this strange tone that happened, and it went from ooh, in the highest pitch you can imagine. It just when it hit that top note, everything blew apart.
In that moment, were you thinking, I might die?
Oh, absolutely.
Then it finally stopped.
I was in disbelief. It was like, what?
Wadia says they got their first look at the devastation. Their garage gone. One of their neighbors injured. Every home on the street was damaged or destroyed.
And went up our street and just pulverized all the houses. They were pretty much everybody lost almost everything they had.
This street holds many survival stories, from a man hunkered down in a treehouse to a pregnant woman saved from her basement. That baby will celebrate her 50th birthday this year.
This corner is that. This house was gone.
So that house was completely
pretty much
wiped.
gone.
You
yeah,
can't even see
it's just it was rubble.
In the middle of the destruction, Wadia says they found the piano right where she left it.
It was open to a page called Blow Winds. Didn't even know that song was in the book. That was still on the piano.
Her home was lifted up and moved 4 inches. It had to be torn down and rebuilt, a project that later inspired her future career.
We ended up doing a lot of the work, drywalling, staining. I'm an architect now.
Her nightmares faded with time, and Wadia ended up living on the street for 50 more years.
It brings back joy.
Yeah, it does. When you go through something as traumatic as this, and you come out with your life, that's all that matters. And every day is a blessing.
News coverage was much different back then, with mobile live units not even around in Louisville in 1974.
That's right, Ben. Back then it was all film and radio news coverage. WHAS TV and radio had the biggest staff in the state under one roof on April 3rd, 1974. And one of those broadcasters is the legendary Byron Crawford. I met him right back here in Crescent Hill.
Or we probably wouldn't have been able to walk on this sidewalk.
I'm surprised this tree is still here.
That day, Byron Crawford had been on the job barely a year as a WHAS radio news anchor.
I'm surprised how good it looks today. And it's unbelievable to me that it's been 50 years. I just can't believe it.
You say you're having a hard time with that. Why is that?
It just doesn't seem that long ago to me. You know, I was 28 years old then.
Dave, is there any indication that there is more than one tornado in the vicinity?
Here he is in the WHAS radio newsroom, 1973. Now 78 years old, Byron worked for both WHAS TV and radio. And on April 3rd, here's some of his first afternoon radio news reports as the anchor that day.
John, I think for Louisville right now we are under a tornado warning. Is that correct?
And it was not one of these picture book tornadoes with the tail whipping back and forth. It was a big, dark cloud looming.
In the air that day was the WHAS traffic copter manned by veteran pilot Dick Gilbert. Crawford remembers one live report from Gilbert like it was yesterday.
But he said, no, I don't see anything. Yes, he said, there it is.
It's still turning at a large, yes, there's one now. Started, yes, dipping down from the bottom of the cloud. And let's see, that will be over in the highlands.
It was a time when people tuned AM radio in droves during emergencies. WHAS radio and TV never lost power. Crawford was on the air reporting for 9 hours.
We knew that our main objective was to save people's lives.
Where's Garrett's Market? Do you know?
That is Frankfurt Avenue.
WHAS 11 news film shows Garrett's Market on Frankfurt Avenue at Stills, badly damaged. We went back and found it today. It's no longer a market, but the building is still there and being used. And then take a look. Here's badly damaged Forest Court in 1973 after the twister cleared Crescent Hill. We went back to Forest Court to match up the photo. Here it is today.
You're learning these things from these reporters.
In 2004, for the 30th anniversary of April 3rd, WHAS 11 recreated the actual tornado with 3D graphics, reporting that it was a multiple vortex tornado, a large tornado circulation that carries within it several smaller twisters, spinning at incredible speeds, revolving around the parent storm. They knew things were bad in Louisville when the water company was hit.
Please do not use water here in the city of Louisville.
It was the wildest thing because people were saying, don't use the water. They weren't saying cut back on the water, they were saying don't use water.
Channel 11 news anchor Ken Rowland told me in 2008 the water company damage sent a dire message.
Well, it was a serious situation, but we were all affected together.
The two journalism professionals working in the same station, one on television, the other down the hall on radio, in the end coming to the same conclusion after the tornado left us.
It's strange that a storm that literally tried to blow us apart brought us closer together.
It refocused us on what's really important.
Two tornado memorials still stand, both in Crescent Hill. Kennedy Court Park, which emerged from the wreckage of a mansion, and right here, a marker celebrating the community spirit that revitalized Crescent Hill. Still standing 50 years after April 3rd, 1974. Ben, I was in elementary school on April 3rd. They got us out of school early, dropped us off at our bus stop. I remember getting off the bus and the sky was on fire. It was angry. Wow. We ran to the house. WHAS TV was already on. Ken Rowland was on the screen, but we headed to the basement. And Byron Crawford told me, though, that in the newsroom, it wasn't until Brandenburg was hit so hard that they knew it was coming toward Louisville and they had problems.
The tornado that hit Brandenburg and Meade County was the strongest to hit in Kentucky that day, an EF5. Storm team meteorologist Alden German takes us to Brandenburg, where the impact of that storm is still felt 50 years later.
The sun shines brightly on Brandenburg today, but it was a very dark day 50 years ago, April 3rd, 1974. 31 people lost their lives in one of the deadliest tornadoes in Kentucky history. Today, this memorial stands immortalizing those lost in an event that nobody here will forget anytime soon. Bill Morgan knew something wasn't right.
The whole day was different. Something was wrong. It felt wrong. It felt pressure. The smell was wrong. Everything about that day was wrong.
Morgan was with his friend, current Brandenburg Mayor David Pace, when he saw what he calls a wall of black heading toward them. Morgan got Mayor Pace and other friends and found the nearest place to hide, which meant breaking down the basement door of the old city hall.
And we were in a totally dark room, tripping over fire hydrants, water pipes, fire hoses, trying to get to the back wall. If we had been over on that side of the street, we may not be here talking about it.
Then came the sound. Roaring, deafening. The massive tornado shook City Hall, at the time an old two-story house, twisting it off its foundation. After the tornado passed, Mayor Pace says another deafening sound came. Silence.
The first thing I noticed is how calm, quiet it was, and then the noise of people screaming and crying, and people were walking down the streets, injured, and people were just laying in the parking lots that were injured, people that were deceased, unfortunately, and then our helicopters from Fort Knox were landing in our little baseball field.
Among the dead included a mother and her 3 children. Among the survivors, a 90-year-old and her son-in-law, sucked out of their shelter and carried 200 yards away. From the air, the scars have largely healed, but Morgan and Mayor Pace remember the destruction vividly.
Everything that you see now was gone. Everything was gone. There's neighborhoods behind those buildings that are gone and have never been built back.
Though some buildings never returned, the community did. It was one of several positives that came from the disaster.
Friendships like Bill and I.
Mindy and Brandenburg came to have a better respect of severe weather because of the tornado and encouraged them to build stronger, more durable buildings. Community camaraderie and support flourished after the devastation, and better emergency infrastructure in the form of EMS and fire response was built.
The rally of this community to make us come back. I mean, it'd been easy for this town to have suffered for many years, but it didn't happen. Everybody worked hard to make it become what it is today, and even stronger.
It wasn't just Kentucky that saw damage from the super outbreak.
Several tornadoes touched down in southern Indiana as well. 2 tornadoes formed near Madison, Indiana, hitting nearby Hanover College, which had to close for a few weeks. Near DePaul in Harrison County, the National Weather Service says an EF5 tornado killed 6 people. It also cut through Palmyra and into the Borden area.
Not long after the storm hit, a WHAS 11 crew spoke to a man in Palmyra who was at home with his wife when the tornado came through.
So we headed around the house and got under the house there, got in this corner right over here, and it lifted the house right off the foundation there, and I thought it was going to take us out with it too.
The deadliest of the super outbreak tornadoes hit the town of Xenia, Ohio. An EF5 tornado killed 32 people, injured more than 1,000 others, and caused an estimated $100 million in damages.
When we come back, the view from the air. The WHAS radio traffic helicopter pilot at the time, Dick Gilbert, saved a lot of lives on April 3rd. He reported on it real time.
It's completely wiped out. Every house is damaged to some extent.
Now, 50 years later, we're going to travel that same path as we take a closer look at his impact on that day.
Dick Gilbert saved a lot of lives that day.
That's legendary WHAS 11 anchor Ken Rowland, 1 month after the April 3rd, 1974 tornado. He's talking about WHAS radio traffic reporter Dick Gilbert, who was up in his helicopter providing real-time updates as the tornado moved.
Gilbert was able to tell people where the tornado had already hit and, most importantly, where it was heading next. He was also the first to report on the damages left behind.
In fact, he was a Louisville native, Ben, who ironically grew up where we're standing, in Crescent Hill. He knew every street down below as he was flying in the air. So now, 50 years later, our Reed Yaden and photojournalist John Humphreys are retracing his aerial path.
We're hitting winds up the good gracious sakes alive.
How high is the wind speed at this time?
There's 50 right there. My golly, the whole thing's going, here I'm going, good.
Now the wind damage hit the roof of Freedom Hall, and it tore 3 big holes in the roof. The horse barns are no more. It is definitely moving up toward the Crescent Hill water tank now.
It was just after 4:30 when meteorologist John Burke abruptly ended that live radio interview. Dick Gilbert followed the tornado in a helicopter as it cut an 11-mile path northeast across Louisville Metro, impacting Audubon Park, the Highlands, Crescent Hill, Indian Hills, and Northfield. 900 homes leveled or severely damaged. You're looking at Northfield, just after the tornado. Here's the way Northfield looks today from the Sky 11 drone.
It's as bad as I've seen anywhere. The whole park over here, Seneca Cherokee Park, there aren't any trees left in Cherokee Park.
400 acres of Seneca and Cherokee parks lost 2,000 trees. The cleanup included planting 2,500 new trees. The words of a parks official 50 years ago have proven accurate.
25 years from now, I think that there will certainly be evidence that that this part of the park is less mature than parts of the park that weren't hit. 50 years from now, I think it will be a pretty mature looking park, so that somebody that's in grade school or even high school today has a very good chance of seeing it as a mature park.
Damage from the tornado cost $37 million. That equals over $250 million today. While a half a century has erased the scars, the memories of April 3rd, 1974 are forever etched in the collective memories of this community.
Still ahead, the lessons learned from April 3rd, 1974.
The world changed in terms of thunderstorms for that event.
How the super outbreak changed the way we're able to forecast and track severe weather today.
Storm tracking technology and forecasting knowledge has come a long way in 50 years, but a big part of that is because of the April 3rd tornado outbreak.
Yeah, the storm exposed our lack of tools and preparation and an urgent need to improve our meteorological skills.
Radar today is our primary severe weather tracking tool, but in 1974, radar technology was just in its infancy. The maps were difficult to read in a dark room with no Doppler effect to detect storm motion or tornado rotation. Here's National Weather Service Chief Meteorologist Dave Reeves reflecting on the event in 1984.
We couldn't really make much judgment other than they were there, and this particular echo that had hit Hardinsburg and Brandenburg was right on line to come here. So I asked them to sound the sirens and told them we were putting out a tornado warning, etc. Turns out that it was 17 or 18 or 19 minutes later that tornado touched down here.
As the leader of our local National Weather Service office today,
Oh yeah, what time's that?
meteorologist John Gordon calls it the dinosaur age of meteorological technology.
We had one model before 74. Now we have all this stuff, right? We had no radar. We had a 57 old radar vacuum tube in dark room. Now we have Dopplers. We have webcams. We have mesonets. We have more meteorology programs. The world changed in terms of thunderstorms for that event.
After the outbreak, the mission was clear. Better technology, better forecasting, and better warnings. The National Weather Service installed the new WSR-74 radar in 1978, which could look up into a storm. But the big leap in radar technology wouldn't arrive until 1994 with the WSR-88 radar. It's the same radar we use today, located at Fort Knox.
You can look at any given target and which way it's moving to, from, or whatever, horizontal, vertical data. We can look at ice, the amount of ice in the storm, how much hail.
Tornado warning lead time has increased from just a few minutes in 1974 to now 15 to 30 minutes. In addition to better tools, we also needed meteorologists. After the outbreak, TV stations started hiring trained meteorologists to interpret and forecast the weather rather than simply relaying information from the National Weather Service.
Now all the storms are dropping to the south.
Through new generations of scientists and breakthroughs in technology, the impact of the April 3rd outbreak is still felt today, and ultimately saving lives.
Almost everything in meteorology has improved since the 1974 outbreak, but we still need to work on communication. We all need to take the warning seriously. We all need to prepare and take shelter when those warnings are issued.
And when we come back, Ben, you and I are going to take a look at how this storm devastated Louisville, but then brought the community together and its lasting impact 50 years later.
The neighbors and the people have been outstanding, really outstanding. I've never seen anything like it in my life. You've got a good community here.
Day after day, from April 4th on, Louisville pulled back together, along with Brandenburg and so many other communities around us reeling from the tornadoes. Each single day, it got better.
We are in a safer place to live now when it comes to severe storms. Louisville's TV station started hiring full-time scientists, meteorologists to cover the weather. Our tornado warning siren system was expanded greatly and is now tested on the second Tuesday of every month. We now have the technology that can predict severe weather. And one other thing happened. People building houses made sure they had basements.
Ben, April 3rd, 1974, we still talk about it around here like it was yesterday. We remember where we were. It was certainly a storm that changed Kentuckiana forever. We want to thank you very much for watching WHAS 11's special presentation, the 74 tornado, 50 years later.